to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Southgate's mission statement is Learning for Life. The vision statement is Southgate Community Schools, the best choice for students and parents.
I'm scared making a decision.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve or revise the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Motion is approved by Dr. Pomponio, supported by Mr. Green. Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have an agenda. Are there any citizens who would like to speak tonight? Okay, seeing none. We're on to presentations. The first presentation is the 2017-2018 audit report from Yo and Yo, Mr. Michael Georges.
Hi. I think Teresa's going to fire up the presentation. Teresa, you want me to go over the single audit and stuff first while we're doing that? Okay. Our audit consists of three different things. It consists of the financial statements, the single audit report, which is a report of federal expenditures, and our governance letter. So I think what we'll do first is you should have the single audit report. We'll go through that one first while Teresa's bringing up the slide presentation. And let me find my page here. The first letter in the single audit report is a letter on internal control. And so we have the duty to go over through your internal controls as they relate to federal programs and federal expenditures. And we want to test to see if there's any, if you're following your controls, and we did find there was no findings in that report. The next report that we give you, the next letter, is on compliance of major programs. We tested 2 major programs, and none of them had any compliance issues, so there were no findings. There were no findings at all on the single audit report this year, which means you're going to be a low-risk auditee next year, which is a good thing because this year we had to audit 2 programs, and hopefully next year we'll only have to audit 1. But we're not 100% sure about that, but that's a lot less work for your staff and for us a little bit. So you had a clean bill of health in the single audit report. So we have the presentation up now, so I guess we'll go through that next. Thank you for having me here tonight. We talked a little bit of audit overview. If you have any questions as we go along, I know you've had the financial statements. And if you have any questions as we go through the graphs, please don't hesitate to ask, or we can also do it at the end. These are some of the things that we do when we perform your audit. We have internal control testing and evaluation. We look at the controls that you have in place, and we test those controls. We do walkthroughs, we pull an invoice, or we pull a sample, and we go through them to see that, in fact, that the controls that you say you have, in fact, that you have. And we also look to see that some common controls that should be in place are in place. Risk assessment, we tend to look at areas in prior audits that may have had high risk that we might want to look at. Typically, we always look at the 60-day rule, which means that any revenues that come in after 60 days cannot be reported in the current year. They have to be reported in the next year. So that's always the area of high risk that we look at. Examination of documents, we look at a lot of things. Teresa will tell you, they're always pulling many, many documents for us to look at. Analytical analysis, we compare current year to prior year, current year to budget. We ask questions. Why is this different? Why it's not different? And so then we get satisfaction to the answers that we feel that it was fine. Asset liability approach, obviously at June 30th, we want to make sure that the assets that you say you have, and the liabilities that you need to record are recorded. Concurring review, every one of our audits, after it goes through me, goes to a separate concurring review department in our firm, and that's the experts in school districts, and they go through everything once again. Again, our reports, we issue the financial statements, the report on expenditures of federal awards, which is a single audit, and the required communications with the board. This presentation is pretty much the graphs that are going to go through the reports on the financial statements. Our results, this is what you pay us for. You pay us for our opinion on your financial statements. And you received an unmodified opinion or unqualified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that you could receive on your financial statements. In short, it says the school's financial records and statements are fairly and appropriately presented and in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. And they are free from material misstatement, whether due to fraud or error. So that's the highest level of assurance that you could receive. And if you weren't going to get that opinion, you would have known about it before this. Balance sheet's a little smaller to read for the audience. This is a snapshot of June 30th of your balance sheet. This is your assets and your liabilities. You can see you have a number of funds. You have the general fund, special education center program, and the capital projects funds. Those are all determined to be major funds by definition. The non-major governmental funds, you have 3 funds in there. That's the cafeteria fund, the debt service fund, and the community service fund. See, in the general fund, we have total assets of almost 10.7 million, or just 10.7 million. The 2 largest assets that you have are cash, 3.6 million, and due from other governmental units of 6.5 million. This is mostly your state aid payments that you received in July and August, but are accrued back to the June balance sheet that are owed to you from the state of Michigan. We can see you have total liabilities of 8.5 million. The 2 biggest liabilities are state aid anticipation note of 3.6 million and the accrued salaries payable of 2.5 million. Those are pretty much the teacher salaries that are owed for July and August. Again, you accrued your state aid, you have to accrue the teacher salaries that are paid in July, August back to the June date to keep it in that fiscal year. When you subtract the assets from the liabilities, or liabilities from the assets, you get your total fund balance of just over $2 million. And we're going to talk a little bit more about fund balance in future graphs. But that was what you ended up in your general fund. Special Education Center program, their assets are just over $1 million and their liabilities are just over $1 million. And that program gets zeroed out, so there's never a fund balance in there. Capital Projects Fund, that's where your bond issue went into and where you're spending money on their capital project campaign. You still have about $2.4 million left in there in cash, but you had liabilities at June 30th of $500,000. So you have roughly $1.8 million left at June 30th in your capital projects fund. Now, I know that was some of that was earmarked for an Anderson roof project and some other things that administration I know is going over. On the non-major governmental funds, we had fund balance there of $1.4 million total for the 3 funds. No funds are in deficit. All right, Teresa. Thank you. This is a statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Obviously, this is a very condensed version, because if you look in the back of your financial statements, the general fund, it's about 14 pages long. This is sort of gets you down to 1 page. The general fund has revenues and other sources of 41 million, just over 41 million, 41,000,001. Expenditures and other uses of 41.2. You had a change in the fund balance where your expenditures exceeded your revenues for the fiscal year June 30th of 2018 by $91,000. You subtract that from your fund balance at the beginning of the year, and you end up with that fund balance of $2,044,000 at the end of the year. Again, your special education center program took in almost $6.8 million in revenue, and it had the same number of expenses, so it has no fund balance. Capital projects fund, since you received your bond issue a couple years ago, the capital projects fund only had $67,000. Most of that was probably interest on your investments.
That's correct.
Yeah. And you had $8 million in expenditures, which were for capital projects. Yes. And then you had a change in the fund balance of $8 million to the negative. But all that was, those money were bond proceeds spent on your capital expenditures, and you ended up with $1.8 million left in your fund balance, which you could spend after, you started probably spending during the summer as well, July 1st. Again, the non-major governmental funds, $6.2 million, $6.28 million in revenue, $6.3 million in expenditures. You ended up just with about a $40,000 expenditure exceeding revenues in those funds. The next graph is the balance sheet general fund from 18 to 17. Shows you your assets versus your liabilities, and you get a fund balance. Obviously, 17 was $2.136 million. This year was a little bit less at $2.044 million. I just want to make a couple comments about the fund balance. This represents about 6.9% of the district's unrestricted revenues. The Michigan Department of Education, when they look at the watch, it's 5% of unrestricted revenues, so you're still over that 5%. You're at 6.9%. It also represents 5.2% of the prior year's expenditures, and the board has set a goal of reaching 10%, and with a minimum of 5%. So you're still within that range. You're at 5.2%. So you're not below your minimum that the board has set. All right. This is a different way to look at it. We're looking at your revenues and expenditures from original budget to final budget to what they were actually. You can see the original budget, you budgeted revenues exceeding expenditures by $138,000, and the final budget you expected it to be expenditures exceed revenues by $750,000. So that was a $900,000 swing. But you got to remember, those two budgets were adopted almost 1 year apart. The first budget is adopted in June of the beginning of the fiscal year, and the ending budget is adopted probably in June of the ending fiscal year. So that was a 1-year difference. And you can see you actually ended up at 91,000, closer to the original than the final. The good thing is that you were under budget in terms of the expenditures by about $680,000. When we do that, we do ask questions and of the business office of why there was a difference, and so we were satisfied with that difference. There was a couple of areas that Teresa pointed out which were satisfactory to us. But if you're going to be it's going to be under budget versus over budget, because if you're over budget on expenditures, you're going to get a letter from the Michigan Department of Education and a general fund. I've already had school districts this year getting one for last year's, because we have to put those in the financial statements and disclose them. So you had it's usually when you adopt by function, no general fund functional expenses were over budget in the general fund. So it's a good thing. All right. General fund comparison to prior year, revenues versus expenditures. You could see in 17, you had excess revenues of 1.7 million, almost 1.8 million. Again, you were still building up your fund balance, and there was an effort to do that. This year, you spent a little bit more than you took in by $91,000. The original budget had you aiming for a slight increase in fund balance, but you just ended up with a slight decrease. So really, that flip wasn't too much from your original budget, your original thought. All right. This is a pie chart showing your general fund revenue, the pie chart showing where the revenue comes from. You can see state revenue is $30 million, or excuse me, 73.3% of your total revenues taken in, the largest piece. The next largest piece is your interdistrict revenues at 5.9%, or $2.43 million, and $1.8 million of that is the enhancement millage, which is the second year that you've received that. Before that would be federal. The next is federal dollars, $2.407 million. That's also 5.9%. I'm sorry, local property taxes were the second biggest, with a 13.7%. Those are your local revenues. Most of those are property taxes, about 4.9 million. And that makes up your revenue. Your revenue doesn't change too much year to year. The enhancement millage certainly has helped the last 2 years, and obviously the everything else pretty much stays the same. Slight increases based on your student enrollment. General fund expenditures. We can see here the largest piece of this pie is salaries, 48.1%, almost $20 million. Employee benefits are the next piece, $13 million, or 32%. So 80.1% of every dollar spent in a district is spent on salaries and benefits for employees. So it's not unusual. It's how it always is. It's very common with school districts to be right on 80%. The next biggest piece of that puzzle is purchase services at $5 million, then supplies and materials at $1.4 million, and capital outlay $658, transfers at $879. General fund expenditures by function. This is a different way to look at those expenditures. We can see instruction is almost $26 million, or 63%. That is everything in a classroom. That goes from salaries to books. Anything that happens in that classroom is under instruction. Under supporting services of $14 million, that's everything out of the classroom, from principals to building maintenance. And then other than that, there's very few other expenditures that don't fit in one of those pieces. Per pupil analysis of the general fund revenue expenditure, you can see that the green line is the revenue line. And it was, from 2014, it increased from 9160 to 11,043. But then the last 2 years, you can see it's going rather dramatically. A lot of that is that enhancement millage that you got. That certainly helped out. But also, if you just taking the last year, where it went from 10,225 to 11,043, you had an enrollment drop of 316 students, okay? And your revenues just dropped slightly. So when you start dividing that, that's what happens. You're going to see the revenue per pupil is going to go up, and expenditures per pupil are going to go up, because you have less pupils. All right, next one is 10-year enrollment analysis. This is a scary trend, obviously. It's happening in many larger school districts. Your student enrollment dropped by 1,731 students, or 32%, almost 1/3, over the last 10 years. And I think when you see a couple other graphs we're going to go through, you're going to see what happened when you got into 2011, 12, and 13, when you started to experience these decreases. Here's your 10-year foundation allowance trend. Back in 2009, 10, and 11, it was steady at 75-35. Today, it was $76.31 in the current year, which is a $96 increase over the last 10 years, or 1.3%. So you can see right there what happened. Okay, the huge dip in 2012, 13, and 14 until it started finally to go back up in 16, pretty good. But you're pretty much at the same level you were 10 years ago in terms from state funding, in terms of the foundation allowance. You had that 1 year alone from 11 to 12, that with your student count, that was almost $2.4 million in revenue that you lost. It's hard to recover from that in 1 year to make the changes that's necessary. All right, Teresa. This shows you, you first entered in 2011 a deficit fund balance that peaked at 2013. I call this sort of the perfect storm during this period, is that you had the foundation allowance was dropping, the MIPSRS rate was going up, and your student enrollment was falling. So with those three things together, it happens very fast that this happened. But you can see after 2013, the problem was rectified and you started heading out of the deficit, and today you're at over $2 million. So, you know, you increase your fund balance in the face of declining enrollment, which is very, very hard to do. And so I know the school district made some really tough decisions, some tough cuts. So it's good to see that you're now on the positive side of that fund balance. I know it was a lot of hard work for everybody here and everybody in the district. All right, the next one is general fund balance as a percent of expenditures. We just want to say that your peers, the larger districts, are at 3.97%. Again, you're at 16, 17, you're at 5.4%. You're at 4.96% this year compared to that chart. But I think it's you're staying right around with your peers are at. Some are higher, some are lower, some are in deficit, some probably have 10 or 15%. But you're right where the average is at, above that average. All right, MIPSRS rate history. This is just informational. You can see the MIPSRS rate, increased again where you see that spike in 11, 12, and 13 where it's going up. That's where your fund balance was going down. So charts don't lie sometimes. If you were to overlay those together, you would see that all the revenue sources that were, or expenditures that were heading up and down, that's where your fund balance was going. So they all had an effect on that fund balance. But there was a 44% increase from 2007 to 2018. That rate from 17.74 to 25.56. Here are some of the future challenges that I think that all school districts are pretty much facing, and you in particular. I think the state economic conditions, political conditions, obviously there's an election this year. And so no matter who wins, you're going to have a new administration, which there's going to be changes. So that's something that you don't know what's going to happen. So that's something on the horizon that you're always going to have to look out for. Retirement rate increases, they're always going up. I think it was pretty flat this year, Teresa. It went up a little bit, didn't it? Or did it stay flat? It went up just a little bit. State revenue fluctuations. If the economy's humming right now, but if it goes sideways, then that's going to affect the funding of school districts. Enrollment trends are heading down. Rising health care cost. Your pension obligation, we didn't talk much about this, it was $73 million. That's something we put in the district-wide statements. It doesn't affect the fund balance in the general fund. But this new year we had OPEB obligation. That's the health insurance portion of the pension. Before we had just the regular pension, the money part of the pension. This is the health care part of the pension. So your obligation is over $25 million to the district. So right now you're at about $100 million in pension obligations. Unfunded pension obligations, I might add. New accounting pronouncements. Those are always things that people don't want to think about, but GASB is continually putting out new pronouncements. We might go over those a little bit in my letter in just a minute. I think now I'd like to go to the governance letter. That was the small letter that we send you that we're required to send out at the end of each audit. And I'll just take a minute to go through that. We address it to the management, the Board of Education. The first page of our letter, it's probably stapled. I don't know if it's in the folder. It's probably just a stapled letter that you might have received. We talk about accounting estimates. You have estimates for fixed assets, depreciation. Your pension liabilities are estimates. Estimate accrued compensated absences are estimates. And when we do, we try to look at your estimates to see if they're free if they're free from bias. And we did find that they are free from bias. We talk a little bit about the new accounting standards that are coming out. One of the ones that's going to be troublesome is the new lease standard that's required for June 30th, 2020-21. When you have operating leases for buildings, let's just say, before you just paid that, and we had a disclosure in the footnotes that said, you know, you're obligated to pay $10,000 a year for 10 years. Well, now you have to capture, that's a right, so they feel that's an asset. So we have to book that as an asset on your balance sheet in the general fund, let's say, and then we're going to have to book the liability. We're not sure how this is going to work yet, but they're not going to equal, because you have to present value the asset, because it's over 10 years, but you don't present value the liability. So they're going to be offsetting. They're not going to offset each other. So this is the same thing that the corporate financial world is also facing this, but also it's happening to governments as well. So that's going to take a little bit of time to get that, and it's a lot of extra work for either your finance department or for us, depending on who chooses to do that work. But it's work that has to be done to get a clean opinion on your financial statements, which is important to your bond company. A couple of things I just want to talk about is that there were we had no significant difficulties in dealing with management, performing our audit. There were no uncorrected misstatements that were more than trivial. We had no disagreements with management during the audit. At least I didn't have any disagreements, unless they were disagreeing with me when we left. But again, we did adopt a new accounting standard because you implemented the OPEB, GASB Statement 75 this year. So that was extra work to get done to put that liability on the books. With that, we had no other items for management consideration. We found no weaknesses in internal control that we discovered during our audit. But I'm open for any questions that you might have. I want to thank Teresa and Joe for their help and the staff's help. Everybody was very professional, and the audit went really without any concerns at all.
Okay.
Did you have
Teresa,
any
you want to add
questions
anything
already?
before we get into questions? Or?
So the very front of the financial statements is actually the government-wide financial statements, and that's where that $75 million and the $25 million gets added. Those numbers are not part of the fund financial statements, but those first two pages are required to be put in our financial statements to show what the district would look like if it was on a company basis. So it actually shows a very significant fund deficit, and that's very common throughout most districts in the state. Once you get past those two statements, then that reflects the fund financial statements and our operations during the year. And I just wanted to thank my staff and everyone in central office for their hard work, not only during the audit, but during the year, and for all the employees in the district that follow our policies and procedures so that they're when they do their evaluation, there are no internal control issues, no risk issue, very limited risk issues, so forth. Everyone does, it's due to everyone doing the correct thing every day during the year, and I greatly appreciate it.
That's a GASB requirement, right, that we identify the unfunded liability portion?
Yes, it is.
We don't have to fund it, we just have to identify
No, we don't
it.
have to fund it, and we get all that information just like on the on those first couple pages. There's deferred inflows and outflows, and that's all related to this. And we get the information from ORS every year.
Because the overall number is much larger. That's
yes.
just our designated portion of it.
That's just our portion.
Okay.
It's
Any
it's
questions?
unfunded, but someday it's going to have to be funded. We're not sure how that's going to happen. That's the unknown. That's the great unknown.
Right. Okay. Are there any questions? Questions, groups, sir?
Referring to slide on page 6 of my deck here, I imagine it's probably slide 12. It was the per pupil analysis of the general fund revenues, expenditures, and transfers. Showing revenues versus expenses and how they're pretty much meeting up in 2018. My question on the graph, did it include capital expenditures?
I'm sorry, what graph are we at?
Is that the correct graph, Jason?
I think it's your,
Yes, that-
your
Okay.
page 11.
Page 11, okay.
It's on our page 6, but it's your slide number 11.
Okay,
11,
okay.
12, yeah.
I see it now. I'm sorry.
My question was, does that include capital expenditures from the bond?
Oh, no, it does not.
It does not.
But if there were capital expenditures in the general fund, then it would be in there.
If any capital, we do have very small capital outlay in the general fund, so if it's a single item that's more than $5,000, it's classified as capital outlay, but that's very minimal in the general fund.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No? All right, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next presentation we have is adult ed.
Hi, I'm Wendy Grish, the interim director of Southgate Adult and Community Education Asher School. And I'm just going to talk about some of the programs that we have going on. Community Education, Adult Ed, Southgate Virtual Academy, and the Alternative Education. And that's a picture of our new sign up there, if you haven't driven by to see it. Sort of nice. For Community Education, we have over 70 classes that are offered, and there are currently 837 students enrolled in some of these adult or community education classes. Our Adult Ed is made up of GED, which they're changing the name to HSE, High School Equivalency, ABE, Adult Basic Education, ESL, English as a Second Language, and HSC, High School Completion. The common goal for all those adult education students is that we get 65% of them to post-test. So they do a pre-test when they first enroll, and then we have to capture them in a post-test after 40 hours of instruction. We are also working, Michigan, there's a big push right now to get adults into the workforce, so we need to increase our post-secondary opportunities for these students. Our high school equivalency, or GED, our enrollment is ongoing throughout the entire school year. Currently, we have 76 students enrolled. Our goal is to have 21 GED graduates by the end of October and 150 GED graduates by the end of the year. For some of the others, some goals that we have is we need them to pass one or more GED tests and to raise their TABE test, which is their post-test score. These students are allowed to walk at our graduation ceremony, and most attend 4 to 8 hours a week. Once they have reached their GED, they no longer need to come to classes. Our adult basic education, you'll notice it's a little higher here with 107 students. That's because we include the reading classes and the pre-GED classes. That's for students whose scores aren't quite high enough to get them into the GED prep classes. So our goals here are to raise those TABE scores, move students from the pre-GED classes into the GED classes. We had 7 students move up last week. We monitored that very closely, and we want to move some of the others into traditional high school completion classes. And we'd like to bring back our fundamental math class for those students who really struggle in math. Our ESL, you may be wondering why we have a picture of the courtyard here. We have a brand new ESL student this year, and he said he was so happy to be in the school, he wanted to give back. And so he's a landscaper by trade, and he went in and he cleaned up our whole courtyard for us. So he's one of the 139 students. He's also going for his GED simultaneously. Our goal with these, we hope to have 3 of these students complete their CNA certification through the Red Cross, and we need them to move up an EFL level. Our high school completion, again, we're focused only on adult ed students still. We have ongoing enrollment for the Learning Center classes for adults now. They can enter those classes at any time. The good thing about those classes are if they complete them quickly, they can always put another one on their schedule and kind of accelerate their graduation. The cons, of course, is they're missing that face-to-face interaction that works really well with a lot of our students. Our current enrollment for our adult high school is 43. We have 5 that are scheduled to graduate in December and 6 more that are scheduled to graduate in May. And what we want to do is we want them also to raise that post-TABE score, and for many just to pass at least 1 high school class, and the state sees that as a gain for these students. Our Southgate Virtual Academy is back. We have 17 students this year. We have 8 that we hope to graduate this year. Our counselor is going to help them set short-term goals in terms of how many classes they need to graduate in order to reach their graduation. And we want to show growth on their pre and post tests. Our alternative education, we have closed the enrollment now that count period has passed. We'll start to register new students in January. Right now, we have 133 students. The goals we're working on is to retain these students. These alternative students, they seem to want to drop out a little more easily than traditional students. We have 27 students that are slated to graduate in December, 26 in May, and we want to help them set post-secondary goals this year with our new counselor. What you see there is a picture of our Dean of Students and our counselor playing 2-on-2 basketball. It was part of our count day activity. You can't tell the fellow in the middle, he's probably, what, 6'9"? I mean, he's humongous, so I think he was laughing. I'm not sure why he'd be laughing, but he was, and so they really were up to the challenge. Next to that, we have a chart, and it shows what our full-time equivalency count has been since the winter of 2018. I'm kind of excited because this is the first time we've seen an increase in enrollment from one semester to the next since the fall of 2016. To get to the 13% increase that we saw in the fall of 2016, we need to have 101.99 FTEs, and we're still on our way up because we're still in the 10-day period. So we're all feeling pretty optimistic. We were kind of high-fiving each other because for the first time there was no pre-registration done this year. So this all happened in August and September. So we are feeling very positive. And that's the end.
Okay. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
No.
Next presentation is curriculum.
And it's been a while. I chose a different method. I did a electronic newsletter, so I think you have a hard copy in your packet, but I also was able to share that with the entire district. So my goal is not to read through the entire thing because I know you have that, but just to kind of highlight some of the things that maybe we're most excited about. And I think the first thing is our Ed Camp Southgate, our very first ever professional learning in this format. We're actually doing it on our district-wide PD on November 6th. And this is in a different way to do professional learning in that there's no person that comes in and speaks, no presenter, no consultant, there's no preset agenda, but it's really driven by what the needs are of our staff. And so we kind of use our homegrown experts, and they present on topics and their skills, their talents, they share with their colleagues. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm pretty excited. Another feature of an Ed Camp is that you always have a kickoff and a finale, and usually during the kickoff and the finale you have lots of giveaways. So I will say that my administrative assistant, Dina Majeski, has been pounding the pavement. She's been reaching out to some of our local businesses for some donations, and we've got some pretty amazing donations to give away on that day. So I'm pretty excited for that. The next thing that I wanted to share with you is in regards to NWEA testing. We did test pre-K through 11. This concludes tomorrow. So we're anticipating the plan for sending parent reports out either through parent-teacher conferences or sending home with students. We also want to build in the time for teachers within the classroom to share the results with the students so they know where they're at in each of the core areas. And we're just anticipating the results to really give us a detailed picture about what kids know and what they're ready to learn next, and also to help our teachers plan for instruction. So we're excited for that as well. Math, as you know, is a district priority. We've asked our K-5 math coach that worked with our elementary buildings last year, elementary math teachers, Debbie Pappas, to come back. She's working with those folks again to focus on the Eureka math curriculum. We've had an opportunity for our 7 through 12 math teachers to participate in a 5-series workshop focusing on delivering Tier 1 instruction and really engaging strategies to engage our students in mathematics. But also there's a coaching component to that as well. So I'm looking forward to reaping the benefits of that program. We've also needed to make a few moves in the 5-year plan in regards to the urgency in dealing with the math curriculum rather than waiting 2 or 3 years out to have that come up for the adoption. We're moving that up to this year. So we've made some switches around in the 5-year plan for the district. 31A updates, just a few highlights that are new for this year. For us to be eligible for funding, we have to provide support in those 4 areas. So really focusing on regular attendance. So those students that have chronic absenteeism, what are we planning to do to address that? The read by grade 3 law, which is the change where this is the new title for students being proficient by grade 3 in reading. Also focusing on 8th grade math proficiency, and then college and career readiness for students by graduation. And so accountability has been impacted by this, where with our current 31A funding, they don't necessarily dictate how it's spent. I mean, there are some guidelines, but now specifically it will be attached to, beginning in 2019 to 2020, 50% of our at-risk 3rd grade students, if they're not proficient on the year prior ELA M-STEP, we will have to allocate a portion of our 31A funds to directly impact that group of students. And also, if 50% of our at-risk students in 8th grade math are not proficient on the previous year's PSAT, we will have to dedicate specific funds from 31A to address that. And then also, if we cannot show improvement of our 11th grade students in math and ELA from the previous 3 years of the MME scores, we will also then have to dedicate a specific amount of our 31A funds for that group of students. So that is a challenge before us. And the last thing I wanted to pull out from the update was we talked a little bit, a few different times in the past about Atlas, the Southgate online learning, but we're really focusing on establishing that team. We've assembled a group of people that have been working together, and not only just looking at online options for our students, but really looking at retaining 100% of our funds for those students that are qualify for a dropout recovery program that currently we're sending money to Graduation Alliance, and they're accomplishing that. We would really like to develop a plan so we're doing that within Southgate and not having to have our money go to Graduation Alliance, but keeping it here in Southgate. Any questions about anything in the update?
Any questions? Dr. Maloney.
The Atlas online learning, is that the Atlas Rubicon with the shared?
No, it's two very different things. Atlas Rubicon is a repository for curriculum, but Atlas was the name that was developed, I don't know, probably about 4 years ago with Mike Tashi and another group of staff members that developed that idea. So we kind of just reinstated that name back from when they began that planning.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Freitas.
Since this is the first year with using the NWEA, will this be used for teacher evaluation?
So, it has not been mandated this year. There have been some groups of teachers, some departments and some individual teachers that have elected to use it as part of their teacher growth, but we have not mandated it this year for that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Elementary summer school.
All right. It's a pleasure to be here. Anytime I get to present to this board and to an audience, whether it be school improvement, summer school, or talking about our school community, certainly it's something that we, not only the entire professional teaching staff, but the administration takes great pride in it. So I appreciate the opportunity to come and brag a little bit. Summer school for elementary age students is different than secondary in the fact that it is not a credit, no credit, where most of those secondary school students need to complete some sort of requirement for their graduation or to move on. We deal with a select group of students, and as this slideshow will demonstrate, it is fun, it is entertaining, it is challenging, and blasting off to our SummerSlam. Our SummerSlam teaching staff was diversified. We had Michelle Schroeder, who was part of our Special Services Department, Rachel Mazarant, who also works in our Special Education Department as a resource room teacher, Casey Clark, who is a General Education kindergarten teacher, Elizabeth Altizer, who is currently one of our PBIS interventionists, Jill Cretion, who is also a PBIS interventionist, Susan LaFrance, Title I interventionist, Brittany Bardo, a Title I interventionist, Emily Smith, also an interventionist, and Kate Budzinski, who is a 4th grade general education teacher. All of these people are certified, highly qualified teachers. Our SummerSlam philosophy: we believe that children are active learners and unique individuals. Children learn according to a developmental sequence, progressing at their own pace. Most of you, if not all of you, are parents yourself, and you understand how that continuum works out. Children learn by making choices, working with others, and adjusting to what they know through exploration, conversation, hands-on, working together, and individualized. Children learn best in a positive environment where they feel supported and safe. Summer school was a two-part session. It was math and ELA. For our math instruction, it was driven by a student's incoming math benchmark score. The focus of the activities from pre-K all the way to 5th grade was on hands-on materials and manipulatives. An emphasis was on the Common Core language, which is consistent with our regular school year grade level and lessons. We use the common language. The kids are familiar with it, whether they are successful or are still working on it. At least they recognize the language, and that can go a long way in helping kids in that comfort level. English language arts instruction was driven by the incoming individual's DRA score. Hands-on activities capitalized on student interests. Emphasis was on a variety of reading mediums. Not all students learn the same way, and certainly the variety of exposures that you can give those kids is critical for those kids that are non-traditional learners. General information: how do students qualify for summer school? Typically, it's a teacher recommendation and or a parent request. Any parent request has to be substantiated by a parent or a teacher who will also agree that it is necessary. It is not free day school or free daycare. It is not something where you're going to send your kids for the summer for 4.5 hours of supervised activity. The kids that are in summer school are there for a reason. They need to learn, and they need to reestablish that confidence in school. Indicators considered: below grade level academic achievement, poor attendance history, and or a danger of retention. It's a little off-center, but our SummerSlam information. Learning targets were used in each room, mirroring the district model. PBIS language, which is a big part of the elementary community, was mirrored and discussed throughout each day in the classrooms, in the hallways, and in the lunchroom. Teaching staff placed an emphasis on social, emotional, and behavioral factors in the student's development. Relevant professional articles were provided, and it provided a platform for our teachers to have very robust and very professional collaborative conversations. A lot of kids are coming to school with trauma, with social, emotional, behavioral issues, and that's not just during the September through June school time frame. Many of our students came into SummerSlam with those same characteristics. Some ELA data: the DRA levels were used to establish students into classrooms to break them up, and there was always a range. It never fits that, it never works out that kids reading at a level 8, you have a classroom of level 8s, you'll have a range of 2 to 12, and then the next classroom would be, you know, in a similar proportion. DRA levels allow the separation of students into classes. Reading activities were geared toward those individual student needs. And when you have a range of student needs within a class, or a range of reading levels, you have to plan to have a variety of activities, because 12 is a far cry from a 4. So, math data. Benchmark assessment scores were provided by the student's the student's classroom teacher through a teacher input form. Individual strengths and weaknesses for each child were provided on that form. A post-assessment was given at the end of the SummerSlam program. 47% of the students who were assessed demonstrated equal or improved post-assessment scores. Where do we go from here? The individual student SummerSlam data sheets, reporting forms were shared with the child's homeschool instructor. We are continuing to use the district assessments and the district initiatives, focusing in on social, emotional learning and differentiating for each student. Work on stressing the benefits of the SummerSlam experience to our parents. And above all, you know, you can never go wrong with communicating, stressing attendance, stressing effort, having a great attitude, and making school fun. Our ongoing challenges are the homeschool participation. We did have quite a fall off from the beginning of the school year to the end, or the beginning of the SummerSlam to the end. We started with 148 students that were referred. Of that 148, 131 showed up on the first day. By the end of the SummerSlam session, that number was below 100. So it fell off. The attendance fell off quite a bit. Points of pride from the summer: providing continuing education to some of the most needy students in our Southgate community. Coordination of services between our summer latchkey, our summer meet up and eat up program, which is a summer feeding program from the county, and our SummerSlam program. We had parent volunteers during breakfast and lunch, which we served every day. A continuation of the elementary PBIS 3Bs: be respectful, be responsible, and be safe. And it's amazing how important those 3 Bs become to select group of kids. I mean, they're important for all of our students, but for some of these kids who struggle with the school criteria, those 3 Bs are something they can hang their hat on. Over the course of the summer, 12 backpacks with school supplies were given away as weekly raffles as incentives. 36 students with perfect attendance. We gave away 8 $25 gift card incentives. They were to the Office Depot to be used for school supplies for the upcoming school year. And the student incentives were also improved by the following community partners: Hungry Howie's, the Grenadier Family McDonald Restaurants, Buffalo Wild Wings, and Walmart also provided some school supplies for our use, so they're not up there. And then we also, another point of pride was we were visited by many of our central school staff, and as long as I'm the summer school teacher, I want to invite everybody to come on down and see what we do over the summer. It's engaging, it's intellectual, and it's very necessary. Any questions?
I have a couple. The first one, you said that the students learn at different, hands-on and other ways. Are there options for assessments for them to take to, like pre and post tests if they're like learning disability and they have a hard time taking tests?
Over the course of the summer, it's very difficult with the limited amount of staffing that we have for us to really, what's the right terminology, is to differentiate well, we differentiate on a regular basis, but as far as incoming students with IEPs or we try to accommodate them as much as possible. Two of our 9 staff are from our special services department, as well as a lot of collaborative effort with the other teachers to meet the needs of the kids at whatever level that they're at. But as far as there's such a variety of, because you have a range of academic achievement all within one class, you really have to get creative, and you got to hone in on those learning objectives for those students. And those two guys are different than those two and those two over here. And so you could have 10 different groups within one classroom. So it's challenging, but it's also, as I said, it's a very necessary component of our instruction in Southgate. But there's a lot of opportunities for different assessments, yes.
Thank you. And the other question I have is, do you have the comparisons from year to year for the enrollment and who shows up and how many?
I don't have those with me, but I do have the historical data that I could put together.
Okay. Thank you. You can send that to all of us again. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, on one side note, I'd like to invite everybody to Grogan Elementary School at the end of the month on the 26th. We have an Oktoberfest celebration that'll be happening, and that October 26th, it's Friday.
Steal my thunder.
All right. Well, this is just reinforces the thunder. So it's always a great night, and I know there's a lot of activities going on in the district. So we want to open our school community to everybody. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we have facilities.
Hello, everybody.
How you doing?
I'm gonna try to keep it under 5 minutes.
You noted Mr. Wolzek didn't either, right?
I'm sorry?
Just kidding.
I sent the packet over. Next time I'll probably use my computer. So I want to start quickly with the custodial crew, because I oversee the custodials as well. This year, hey, that's a minute taken away, so. All right, for the custodial crew, when I first took over, I was told that the district hasn't been actually stripped in about 7 years. So that was the first test that we had. The entire school district has been stripped, with the exception of the hallways, main hallway at Ford Line and Davidson. They were top scrub. So the difference between the top scrub and waxing is that top scrub you take 2 or 3 layers off, and with the scrubbing you actually go down to the floor. So we thought the floor was beige, but it was actually white. So there was a big difference when the teachers came into the district, and we had a lot of good compliments about how good their floors looked. We'll switch over straight to maintenance. When I took over officially, I was June 17th. I immediately sat down with the superintendent and Ms. McLaughlin and explained to them that I was going to try to do the cross-training. I sat down with my crew. Cross-training for me was, I know that we're separate between grounds and maintenance, HVAC, and what I did was I sat down with all the team and made it very clear to them that this team going forward, we're going to cross-train, meaning if we all had to cut grass, because we weren't there wasn't enough people, we were all going to do it. Changing filters, equipment moving was going to be done by the entire crew, not just by the grounds or not just by maintenance. It was going to be the entire maintenance crew. Filter change, it includes the custodians as well. Small project like painting, and you guys will see in those pictures some of the painting projects that we did. And the snow plowing will also be done by all 5 of the maintenance crew. For the completed projects, when we took over, the superintendent let me know that the press box, the concession stand had to be scraped and repainted, and we did that in 2 days with 3 people. And it passed inspection. This was completed in 2 days by the crew. Floor tiles, there was a lot of floor tiles missing throughout the district. Most of them have been completed with the exception of Anderson. We have a few that are still in need of replacement. The football stadium lights was just completed last Wednesday, and got people were happy about that one. Dave texted me, he told me the lights look awesome. And this gentleman by the name of Russ Allgood, who's been with the district or volunteering with the football and soccer for like 25 years, he stated to one of my guys that This is the first time in 20 years that every light worked for that stadium. So he was very happy about that. The warehouse bathroom has been restored to accommodate, as you guys will see going forward. Dean's Transportation, we have females and we have males. So our restroom was converted over to unisex bathroom so that we can all share it with the lock inside and for privacy. For the warehouse, which is the whole Hyacinth building, the lower levels of windows, where, as you guys know, were broken and didn't look really good, so they were all boarded up. And we will be done with that project this coming week. The overgrown bushes facing Trenton have all been removed. I already mentioned the Dean Transportation accommodations. We're working on the lights for that parking lot for safety reasons as well. And their comment to us was that we were treating them better than their hub, their main hub. So that was a good compliment for the district. The snow equipment as well, that's being worked on by our own crew instead of sending it out for a third party to take a look at them and put new oil in. So we did it all inside. Will be done next week. You'll see here is the catch basin, which is storm water. There was a complaint sent through the superintendent, which he notified me. I am working on the catch basin. It is collapsed by the Hanson building. Quint Plumbing came out, and they're going to go ahead and inspect it because it is collapsed, and some work's going to have to be done there. And I will update you guys in the following meeting if it's necessary, but we're going to go ahead and repair that. The Davidson Gymnasium floor, as you guys know, if you look at the pictures, we had to completely remove, I passed my 5 minutes, remove the floor. Sorry, Joe. We had to completely remove that gym floor because of the coupling. If you guys see in those pictures, the floor was damaged. It had to be removed. We're literally in the process of working with that one still. I did find some damage. I found a tunnel under the gymnasium. Chris had allowed me to look at the blueprints of the building, and I was able to find it. We're still working on that, and we should be able to get any news coming forward soon on that one. The playgrounds, you'll see that I got 2 pictures of playgrounds here. We do have some pieces that have to be repaired. I have an inspection with our insurance personnel, I believe it's the 15th, and we should be getting some good news on that to get those repaired. And as you can see the pictures in the back, it's the Hyacinth building. Our crew cutting down the overgrown bushes, eliminating them, and you also see, I'm sorry, I should have took pictures at night, but these are actually the stadium lights that are on, but it's daytime. You can see how bright it is. I should have put the nighttime lights on it, but this has been completed. There is a big difference. So that's what I have.
Homecoming.
Huh?
I said we'll all see it at homecoming.
Yes, yes. And I think one thing I wanted to add, by my crew doing the cross training, we were able to save some money. I talked to Teresa last week, right? And she made it very clear to me that we're on budget. I didn't even know what, at first that she was tracking it, but she sure was. And that we're on budget, and that's good because most of our stuff we're trying to do it in-house instead of sending it out. And that's including our oil changes for our vehicles. And for the snow, we have 4 trucks with plow, 1 Kubota with the plow, and the John Deere with the bucket. So we should be able to handle this in-house this winter. That's all I have. Any questions?
Yeah, any questions? Dr. Pomponio.
Okay, hello. Have we just figured out how the buckling of the Davidson floor happened? Is it the one that's by the bleachers? Because I know that was up quite a bit.
So me finding out and doing some digging, I was able to speak with the principal and the coach. So apparently this will be the 3rd time, right, that we're going to repair this gym.
As far as I know.
Yes. And so it looks like the problem was never resolved. And so I took it upon myself to kind of dig in. That's why I was looking for the blueprints, because I was not getting anywhere. I was told there was nothing under there. I've been doing this for several years. There had to be something under there. So Chris allowed me to look at the blueprints, and then I found exactly the air tunnel underneath that gym. I couldn't physically go in there for medical conditions, but I did have both our maintenance guys go down and they took pictures, and I forwarded them over to the superintendent and Mr. Lisa, and we saw water leaks in that tunnel, which prompted me to reach out to superintendent, and we had the insurance company send their engineer back out. We're still working on that one, correct? And I contacted another individual company to come out and see if we can give us a core sample, which is where they're going to drill in the middle of that gym, because the tunnel goes, so if this is the gym, the tunnel goes around the gym underneath, and we can't access this wall, like your foundation, right? You can't access it. But if we drill a core, which is a drill, and take samples, we can actually see what's inside, because the damage of the floor, which I didn't present pictures, it's right in the middle of the floor, which then created that coupling effect across the entire gym. So I'm literally working on that still before we put that floor on.
Okay, thank you.
I saw you sigh for my next question. Do we know, am I correct in assuming we're waiting for the insurance claim on this, or are we in the process of fixing this? Or is that's why you were sighing? Here we go.
Me. So when they did their initial assessment, it was for, it's definitely the gym floor needs to be replaced. The wood gym floor needs to be replaced. So the quote was between 125 and 130,000. They hold back about 25 to 30% until the job is done. So we've actually received about $84,000 for that, and then when it's complete, we'll receive the rest less our $1,000 deductible. When the and then I just found this out late yesterday, and I didn't have a chance to talk to Jacob today. The engineer did come back out based on what they found underneath the gym floor. Their assessment has not changed. And the way it was explaining, they're not going to cover any additional work that we need to do. We're looking at waterproofing, and that they would not reimburse us for. The way they explained it to us is that they replace what we had. So we're looking at doing some enhancements underneath so that this does not happen again, and they are not going to cover that. So Jacob is in advance of this, waiting for the engineer to come out. He started trying to get 3 quotes to see what the cost is before we lay the gym floor down.
We also believe that a pump wasn't working, and that could have been part of the reason, and we now have corrected that situation.
Yeah, that has been corrected. It was disconnected, but in the side of the gym, I don't know if I put that in there. There's we noticed the pictures where the water is when it rained. That heavy rain that we received several weeks ago, that was perfect timing because I was able to see some of that water coming in. But the problem is that's the outer wall of the air tunnel, right? But the issue was in the middle of the floor, which we can't access. So the reason why I plan to have this core testing done is so that if, let's say, there is water under there where it's supposed to be dirt, then we might have to go a different route. But one possible solution to this, besides waterproofing the sides of the gym wall, is putting these trenches in the middle of the gym, which then would drain any water then out to the pump, because we have a sump pump, a pump downstairs in that gym. And that will prevent that water from being, standing right there and then protruding up through the wood.
Who would turn the pump off? Just curious. Great question.
Well, the pump addresses any other water flowing around the building, but the issue for that is that we don't know what's inside of this
No,
wall.
he wants to know who turned it off.
Oh, I don't know. I couldn't get that answer, just like I couldn't get an answer what's beneath the gym.
Was it disconnected?
Yes, it was disconnected.
That's ridiculous.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, Mr. President, next question. So, just curiosity, do we know if our middle school students are going to have the use of this gym at all this year? I mean, we're going into the winter months and this and that. What's going to happen for these students? Basketball season, so forth and so on.
So
volleyball.
Yeah, volleyball. Mr. Pekalski did send an email out he wants to meet with myself and Mr. Kemp, and I believe the superintendent, in regards to using Anderson's gym and using possibly Beacon's gym. But so if I get the okay and put this floor down, we're gonna do this in several years again, so we kind of wasted our time. And I would hate to do that. That's why I'm taking this time to actually figure out, because the insurance company's coming, they're telling us, hey, that's all we're gonna do. And that's it. I don't wanna go down the route.
Regardless of what they're gonna pay for, we gotta fix the underlying problem.
Exactly. So when I did talk to the companies that came out, it's a matter of a week or two for them to do these trenches and built this pipe that can lead this water into the sump pump. The floor itself, I did receive the information from the floor installer at the floor. He has the floor. So once this gets corrected and, everybody's informed, the floor goes in, the striping of the floor goes in, it all is going to depend on this information that I'm going to get from these 3 vendors coming up soon.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Okay, that concludes our presentations tonight. On to the next item, which is the consent agenda, which consists of minutes from September 25th, 2018 regular board meeting, HR update, and disbursements for September 2018. I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
To make a motion to approve the consent agenda as listed.
Seconded.
Okay. Motion by Dr. Pomponio and supported by Mr. Koopser. Any discussion on the consent? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes 6-0. And the first action item is the overnight field trip for Anderson High School wrestling team.
So you're being asked to approve the overnight field trip for Southgate Anderson High School wrestling team to Traverse City. The purpose of this trip is team bonding. The trip will be during our Christmas recess from Friday, December 28th to Sunday, December 30th, 2018.
Okay, any questions for staff? Okay, do we have a motion on the item?
Mr. President, I move to approve the overnight field trip for the Southgate Anderson High School wrestling team for the December 28th to December 30th, 2018.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Estheimer. Is there support? Support. Supported by Mr. Green. Any discussion on the item? Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Second item is the overnight out-of-state field trip to New York for DECA.
So you're being asked to approve the overnight and out-of-state field trip for the Southgate Anderson DECA students to New York, New York. The purpose of this trip is to reinforce marketing and entrepreneurship class concepts. The trip will be from Wednesday, December 5th to Sunday, December 9th, 2018.
Okay, any questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, is there a motion on the item?
Mr. President, I make a motion to approve the field trip for Southgate Anderson's DECA students.
I have a motion by Mr. Green. Is there support?
I'll support.
Supported by Mr. Estheimer. Is there any discussion on the item? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, none. Okay. Next item is the approval of the contract for the UTS, United Teachers of Southgate, MEA, NEA.
You're being asked to approve a 3-year contract for the UTS for the 2018-19 year as presented. It is till June of 2021.
Is there any questions for staff?
I'm sorry, August of 2021, I'm sorry.
Any questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the 3-year agreement for the United Teachers of Southgate, MEA, NEA for 2018-19, 2019-20, and 2020-21.
I have a motion by Dr. Pomponio. Is there support?
I'll support.
Supported by Mr. Estheimer. Is there any discussion on the item? Dr. Pomponio?
I stated this a couple meetings ago, and I wanted to restate it, that the teachers are not always appreciated, and being out there in the schools and the district and watching everyone work and being out in extracurricular places, after hours, weekends, that I absolutely appreciate all your time and effort and commitment to the students that you make, so that doesn't go overlooked on this board. So I appreciate all the teachers here in this district. So with that, I appreciate your time and effort towards working with the district for a healthier district. And also, I wanted to thank Central Office for reviewing the contracts, previous contracts, and making sure that we're making a good decision based on budget projections and with comparing what we've done in the past and looking at the language and things like that. So it looks good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Yes, we've talked about it in the previous closed-door session about where do we go in the plight of the district. I truly understand the plight of the teachers and the concessions that they have made. Being a Detroit public school teacher myself, I know what it's like to take concessions, and I just see our declining enrollment as trouble. But with the administration, they indicated a plan, a cost savings plan, should we continue to lose students. We're hoping for a foundation allowance increase by the state of Michigan. So it's tough. I see both sides. So I can support this with what I've heard in the back room.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Mr. President, as Mr. Frieda said, there was a lengthy discussion back there and a lot of great points. I too, obviously, am a teacher and support the play of a teacher, but for me, I believe that asking this administration and putting faith in them, if they thought this was a good contract, and hearing their answers if things went not in a great direction when they've had in the past, I have to put my faith in them, one, and I want to put faith in the teachers, and I know a lot of you sitting in there with the aspect of the one clause that if something does go right, that we're all in this together, that you're willing to discuss if we need to make changes down the road. But at this point, I don't think we do, and I think that you have taken.
Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Are there any employee representatives who would like to speak tonight? Okay, seeing none, we're on to information announcements. Mr. Estheimer.
5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I just want to give you some updates from a couple of my schools, Shelters and Ford Line. A reminder, parent-teacher conferences are fast approaching on Thursday, October 25th. And for regarding scheduling, should be coming home shortly. This is a half-day with 11:30 a.m. dismissal. There's also a PTO meeting October 18th at 6:30 p.m. And Texas Roadhouse is doing a dining out night on the 16th from 3:45 till 10. Texas Roadhouse donates 10% of the total food purchase to the school. Present the server with the invitation sent home with the kids, or you can find the flyer on their Facebook, on the PTO Facebook page at Shelters, and just print the image as I did. Another great event that's coming up in Shelters is the PTO Book Fair. That's the 22nd through the 25th. The PTO is in need of volunteers for this event, so if you can help out, that'd be great. Just contact the school. Lastly, at Shelters, the PTO is hosting their annual Boo Bash the day after the conference is on October 26th from 6:30 to 8:30. That's also a half-day with an 11:30 a.m. dismissal. The Boo Bash is a wonderful event of family fun, trunk-or-treating, spooky hallway, pumpkin decorating, craft, music, and much more. Admission to that event is free. They will have food and drinks that there's small charge for. And with that event, they're also in need of volunteers and parent participants for the trunk or treat. They're collecting any candy donations you may have. Contact Carla at Shelters if you can help. Ford Line's Spooktacular event is October 18th from 6 to 8 p.m. This will have a haunted hallway at that school as well, as a DJ, snow cone machine, and so much more. That one has a $5 donation that will allow you to take advantage of all the fun. Parents and children 2 and under are free, and they're asking for candy donations and Halloween decoration that they can either borrow or you can donate it. Contact the office if you can help. They can put you in touch with Lindsay, who is running the event. And lastly, parents needing additional information from these updates can go to the Facebook pages of these specific schools. Just search for Shelters Elementary PTO or Ford Line PTO. All the information for these events are there. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other information or announcements? Mr. Green.
I will not be as long as him.
Sure.
Mr. Never know. Mr. Walzak stole my thunder, October 26th, Boo Bash, and I think that's the week of the book fair also, right? Everybody over there in the back, then I know. So so for Grogan Elementary, bittersweet for me, it'll be my last one, but hey, so we're gonna be there. I wish all the students at Anderson, Asher, Beacon, whoever, visitors who are coming to enjoy homecoming this week, to have a safe homecoming. Homecoming game is Friday in Salem Park, and I wish everybody be safe and have a good night.
All right, seeing nothing further, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Support.
Mr. Estheimer, supported by Mr. Green.
Vote on it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.